It began with a velvet case quietly carried through a restricted corridor inside Kensington Palace, a case no one had seen in decades, and one Princess Charlotte of Wales was never supposed to touch this early in her life. Yet when senior aides emerged from that private royal meeting, their expressions carried the weight of history itself. Something enormous had changed inside the House of Windsor. And according to palace whispers, it all traced back to Princess Margaret's legendary diamonds. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, palace officials attempted to dismiss the entire situation as another exaggerated round of royal speculation. That had become routine inside the monarchy over the years. Rumors appeared. Courtiers denied them. Then silence settled over the institution like a curtain. But this time, something felt different. The secrecy surrounding the meeting was unlike anything royal correspondents had seen in months. According to insiders familiar with Kensington Palace administrative circles, even senior household staff were allegedly instructed not to discuss inheritance protocols with media contacts under any circumstances. That alone sent shockwaves through royal circles because the monarchy rarely moved with that level of urgency unless the issue touched the future of the crown itself. Reports suggest the meeting involved Prince William, Catherine, Princess of Wales, royal trustees connected to historical family assets, and several senior jewel custodians responsible for overseeing some of the monarchy's most emotionally significant collections. But what truly unsettled insiders was the reason behind the gathering. Various interpretations of the meeting describe a deeply emotional moment in which Princess Charlotte was privately informed that Princess Margaret's celebrated diamond collection may now pass directly to her. Not eventually, not decades from now, but far earlier than anyone expected. For a child already growing up beneath unimaginable scrutiny, the revelation reportedly landed with overwhelming emotional force. Sources close to palace staff whisper that Charlotte did not react with excitement or fascination, but with quiet disbelief. She understood immediately that these were not ordinary jewels. They carried history, memory, burden. They belonged to a royal woman whose life had become one of the monarchy's most complicated legends. Princess Margaret was never merely glamorous. She represented rebellion wrapped in royal blood, elegance shadowed by heartbreak, and a generation of Windsors trapped between tradition and personal freedom. To inherit her diamonds was not simply to receive wealth. It was to inherit expectation itself. Observers noticed subtle changes almost immediately after the meeting concluded. William was reportedly seen spending private time with Charlotte later that evening, keeping public engagements to a minimum while aides worked furiously behind closed doors to contain growing speculation. Meanwhile, Catherine's appearance following the confidential discussions only intensified public concern. Palace watchers claim she looked emotionally drained, carrying the expression of someone fully aware that a deeply personal family matter was about to become an international obsession. And within hours, whispers began circulating among royal commentators questioning why this decision had happened so suddenly. That question quickly evolved into something far more unsettling. Why Charlotte? Why now? According to several royal insiders, the answer may trace back to the late Queen Elizabeth II herself. Some believe this transfer reflects a long-term vision quietly protected behind palace walls for years, one tied not only to family inheritance, but to the future image of the monarchy itself. Different interpretations of royal succession planning suggest Elizabeth viewed Charlotte as uniquely important to the institution's long-term stability. And if that is true, then the diamonds may represent something much larger than sentimental family history. Because behind the scenes, speculation was already growing that not everyone within royal circles expected Charlotte to become the keeper of Margaret's legendary jewels. Certain figures, according to palace administrative whispers, allegedly believed the collection would remain elsewhere within the royal structure, protected under broader institutional control rather than privately associated with a younger generation. That quiet disappointment reportedly triggered fresh tensions behind closed doors, tensions aides are now working desperately to suppress before they spill into public view. But the diamonds were never simply jewels, they were symbols of power, memory, and royal legitimacy, tied to a woman whose shadow still lingers over the monarchy decades after her death. Long before Princess Charlotte of Wales was born, Princess M. Margaret built a dazzling royal identity around jewels that represented rebellion, glamour, and dangerous influence inside the monarchy. Now those same diamonds have resurfaced, and their return is shaking the palace to its core. For decades, Princess Margaret's jewelry collection occupied a strange and almost mythical place within royal history. It was admired publicly, discussed privately, and guarded emotionally by those who understood what the collection truly represented. To ordinary observers, the diamonds symbolized elegance and aristocratic beauty. But inside royal circles, they carried a far more complicated meaning. Margaret herself had become one of the most controversial women the House of Windsor had ever produced. She was charismatic, impulsive, adored by photographers, feared by palace traditionalists, and constantly caught between royal obligation and personal longing. Everything about her life seemed to challenge the rigid expectations surrounding the monarchy. And over time, the jewels she wore became inseparable from that image. Many of the pieces now tied to Princess Charlotte reportedly accompanied Margaret through some of the most emotionally charged periods of her royal life. Palace historians frequently reference state banquets attended during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, diplomatic receptions that strengthened Britain's post-war image abroad, and iconic royal portraits that transformed Margaret into a symbol of sophistication for an entire generation. Yet according to insiders familiar with long-standing palace arrangements, several diamonds were allegedly protected through confidential family understandings rather than simple inheritance structures. That detail alone has fueled enormous speculation behind royal walls because it suggests the jewels were never viewed as ordinary personal possessions. Reports suggest Margaret herself believed certain pieces should remain connected to the direct emotional future of the monarchy rather than being scattered through extended family branches. Various interpretations of old royal discussions describe her attachment to the collection as deeply personal, but also surprisingly strategic. She allegedly saw some jewels not as luxury items, but as symbols of continuity for future royal women who would carry the institution forward during uncertain times. And while those claims remain impossible to fully verify, palace historians insist one undeniable truth still lingers over the collection. Queen Elizabeth II reportedly understood exactly how emotionally significant Margaret's diamonds had become. That emotional connection may explain why the recent decision involving Charlotte has stunned even experienced royal observers. Because according to palace administrative whispers, the late queen allegedly became increasingly protective of historically important royal heirlooms during her final years. Some insiders claim she worried about preserving emotional continuity within the monarchy as public trust in the institution entered a fragile modern era. And within those quiet conversations about the future, Charlotte's name reportedly appeared more often than many realized. The comparisons between Charlotte and Margaret have only intensified since the inheritance rumors emerged. Royal commentators describe a similar composure beneath public attention, a similar ability to command fascination without speaking, and a similar presence that appears to unsettle palace traditionalists. But insiders insist the decision was not based on personality alone. According to sources close to royal household discussions, Charlotte's maturity, discipline, and calm behavior at such a young age allegedly played a significant role in shaping internal trust around her future position within the family. That trust, some believe, became impossible to ignore. Yet with every new revelation came another uncomfortable question. Why were older royal figures seemingly bypassed? Why would jewels carrying such historical importance reportedly move toward a younger generation instead of remaining elsewhere within established royal circles? Those questions have created growing tension behind palace walls because while the public sees diamonds, insiders see something much more dangerous: symbolism, influence, priority. And within a monarchy built on hierarchy, symbols can quietly reshape relationships in ways outsiders rarely understand until it is far too late. But behind the glittering history of Margaret's diamonds lay an uncomfortable reality. There were others within royal circles who reportedly believed those treasures belonged to them instead. As whispers about Princess Charlotte of Wales's inheritance spread through royal residences, another emotion quietly began spreading behind palace doors: disappointment. And according to insiders, not everyone welcomed the decision with grace. At first, the tension remained carefully hidden beneath the monarchy's polished exterior. Publicly, here were no dramatic statements, No visible confrontations, no open signs of division. But inside private dining rooms, restricted palace offices, and long-established royal households, reports suggest the atmosphere shifted almost immediately after news of Princess Margaret's diamonds allegedly passing toward Charlotte began circulating. Conversations reportedly became shorter, invitations suddenly grew selective, and according to palace administrative whispers, aides were quietly reminded to avoid discussing the inheritance matter in front of outsiders, including trusted media contacts who normally maintained friendly relationships with senior royal staff. That silence became impossible to ignore. Royal commentators who had spent decades studying palace behavior noticed something unusual unfolding across multiple households connected to the wider family structure. Certain figures who would typically appear eager to publicly celebrate Charlotte reportedly remained conspicuously quiet. No warm briefings emerged. No supportive remarks quietly reached newspapers through palace intermediaries. Instead, there was restraint, careful distance. A silence so deliberate that it only intensified speculation surrounding what was truly happening behind closed doors. According to various interpretations of internal palace reactions, the inheritance was never viewed as simple sentimentality. The diamonds represented trust, status, future relevance within the monarchy's carefully balanced hierarchy. And for some royal figures, insiders claimed the decision reportedly disrupted expectations that had existed privately for years. Certain individuals allegedly believed Princess Margaret's collection would remain under broader royal oversight rather than becoming emotionally attached to one younger figure so early in her life. That belief, whether justified or not, now appears to have collided with a very different vision quietly taking shape around the future of the crown. Royal observers increasingly interpret the move as symbolic support for the future reign of Prince William. Because within royal culture, symbolism matters almost as much as official titles themselves. Every gesture carries meaning. Every inheritance sends signals. And according to longtime palace watchers, allowing Charlotte to become associated with one of the monarchy's most emotionally powerful collections allegedly reinforces the idea that William's branch of the family represents the institution's long-term center of gravity. That perception alone has reportedly unsettled some corners of the wider royal structure. Yet amid all the speculation, the emotional reality facing Charlotte herself became increasingly difficult to overlook. According to sources close to palace staff, Catherine, Princess of Wales, has allegedly devoted enormous attention toward helping her daughter process the emotional burden now attached to Margaret's legacy. Because while the public sees glamour and privilege, those closest to the situation reportedly understand the deeper pressure forming around Charlotte's young shoulders. She is not merely inheriting jewels. She is inheriting expectation from generations of royal women whose lives were shaped, celebrated, and sometimes destroyed by the institutions surrounding them. Insiders claim Charlotte herself has struggled with the weight of that realization. Reports suggest she became deeply emotional after learning more about Margaret's complicated history and the significance attached to the diamonds within royal memory. The collection reportedly carries stories of sacrifice, loneliness, duty, rebellion, and heartbreak stories that transform the inheritance from something dazzling into something profoundly human. And for a young girl already growing up beneath worldwide attention, the emotional gravity of that responsibility may have arrived far sooner than anyone anticipated. Meanwhile, palace aides allegedly continue working aggressively to prevent private frustrations from spilling into public view. Because the monarchy understands one dangerous truth better than anyone. Family disappointment becomes political the moment symbolism enters the equation. And within the House of Windsor, symbols have a way of reshaping alliances quietly, slowly, and sometimes permanently. And as the palace struggled to contain the growing speculation, a deeper truth slowly emerged. This decision may have been set in motion years before anyone realized it. According to longtime royal observers, the transfer of Margaret's diamonds may not have been sudden at all. In fact, some believe the late Queen Elizabeth II quietly prepared this outcome long before her final days. For years, the monarchy operated beneath a carefully controlled surface where every inheritance, every family arrangement, and every symbolic gesture carried consequences far beyond private emotion. That reality became even more intense during the later years of Queen Elizabeth's reign. When insiders claim she grew increasingly focused on protecting the institution she had spent a lifetime defending. Reports suggest the late Queen monitored royal inheritance structures with extraordinary attention, particularly when it came to historically significant heirlooms connected to the future image of the crown. To outsiders, jewels were treasures, but to Elizabeth, according to palace historians, they represented continuity, stability, memory preserved across generations. That belief allegedly shaped countless private conversations during her final years. Various interpretations of palace planning suggest Elizabeth became deeply concerned about how future generations of royals would emotionally connect to the monarchy during a rapidly changing modern era. The institution had survived scandals, public criticism, family fractures, and growing pressure from a world no longer automatically enchanted by royal tradition. And according to several royal experts, Elizabeth understood something many underestimated. Symbolism would become more important than ever once her reign ended. It is now whispered within royal circles that certain heirlooms were quietly viewed not as personal assets, but as emotional anchors for future senior royals. Palace historians claim some collections were privately discussed in terms of legacy protection rather than financial value. Margaret's diamonds reportedly fell into that category, because while Margaret herself had often been portrayed as rebellious and unpredictable, the emotional power surrounding her image never truly disappeared. She represented glamour tied to sacrifice, charisma wrapped in loneliness, and a royal mystique that fascinated the public for decades. The jewels connected to her became part of that mythology. And somewhere within those long-term discussions about continuity, Charlotte's name allegedly began appearing more frequently than anyone realized publicly. Reports suggest the late Queen viewed Princess Charlotte of Wales as uniquely important to the monarchy's future identity. Not because of her age, but because of what she symbolized. Royal commentators increasingly describe Charlotte as carrying echoes of both Elizabeth and Margaret, at once a blend of composure, quiet confidence, and emotional presence that appears unusually powerful for someone so young. Those comparisons, once dismissed as harmless media fascination, now feel impossible to ignore. According to insiders close to palace operations, Elizabeth reportedly admired Charlotte's calm public demeanor and the disciplined environment created around her by Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales. That admiration allegedly strengthened over time as the monarchy faced growing instability surrounding other branches of the family. While public attention often focused on controversy and division elsewhere, William and Catherine were quietly shaping a future built around duty, restraint, and emotional reliability. Palace observers now believe the inheritance of Margaret's diamonds may reflect confidence in that long-term vision. At the same time, William and Catherine reportedly became increasingly protective over Charlotte's growing royal role. According to sources familiar with palace concerns, both parents understood the danger of placing too much symbolic pressure on a young child too early. They allegedly worked carefully to balance Charlotte's public appearances with as normal a childhood as possible, while still preparing her for the realities of royal life. But the inheritance changed something. Suddenly, Charlotte was no longer viewed simply as a beloved young princess. She became connected to one of the monarchy's most emotionally loaded legacies. And that is why many royal insiders now interpret the diamonds as both emotional and strategic. Emotional because they preserve memory tied to Queen Elizabeth and Princess Margaret. Strategic because they reinforce the future importance of William's branch of the monarchy during a fragile transitional era. The symbolism is impossible to separate from the institution itself, because within the House of Windsor, private decisions often become public signals long before official statements are ever made. But if the palace believed the emotional significance of the diamonds would calm the storm, they badly underestimated the public reaction that came next. Within hours of the palace whispers leaking beyond royal walls, the internet erupted into a frenzy of fascination, admiration, and fierce debate. Suddenly, Princess Charlotte of Wales was no longer just a young royal. She was being discussed as the future keeper of one of the monarchy's most emotional legacies. The reaction spread with astonishing speed. Royal commentators, social media accounts, television panels, and longtime monarchy observers all seemed to collide at once in a tidal wave of speculation surrounding Princess Margaret's diamonds. What began as quiet palace whispers translated, perhaps, formed into an international obsession almost overnight. Every new discussion appeared more emotional than the last. Some people described the inheritance as beautiful and deeply symbolic. Others viewed it as controversial, even unsettling. But regardless of opinion, one reality became impossible to deny. Charlotte had suddenly moved into the center of a conversation far larger than anyone expected. Across social platforms, thousands of royal supporters praised Charlotte's composure and maturity at such a young age. Clips of her public appearances resurfaced instantly. Commentators pointed to her calm behavior during formal events, her poised interactions beside Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, and the quiet confidence many believed mirrored earlier generations of royal women. The comparisons grew more dramatic with every passing hour. Some saw traces of Queen Elizabeth II's restraint in Charlotte's demeanor. Others claimed she carried echoes of Princess Margaret's magnetic presence. And a few observers described her as something even more significant to bridge between the monarchy's past and its uncertain future. But admiration was quickly followed by concern. Critics began questioning whether the emotional pressure surrounding Charlotte had already become too heavy for someone so young. According to various interpretations of palace dynamics, the diamonds no longer symbolized mere inheritance. They represented expectation, legacy, historical responsibility, and many wondered whether any child could truly carry that burden without consequence. That debate only intensified as reports emerged suggesting Charlotte herself had become deeply emotional after learning the full history connected to Margaret's collection. Sources familiar with palace conversations claim Charlotte was particularly affected by stories surrounding Margaret's complicated life inside the monarchy. The glamour fascinated her, but so did the loneliness. The public admiration, the private struggles, the emotional sacrifices hidden beneath decades of royal expectation. According to insiders, understanding that emotional history transformed the inheritance from something dazzling into something profoundly intimidating. And for Catherine, that realization reportedly triggered growing concern behind palace walls. Palace insiders now suggest Catherine has made Charlotte's emotional well-being her highest priority as attention surrounding the diamond spirals further into public obsession. Reports indicate she has worked carefully to shield her daughter from overwhelming media exposure, while also helping her understand the deeper meaning attached to the inheritance. Because within the House of Windsor, symbols rarely remain harmless for long. They evolve, they gain power, and eventually, they begin shaping public perception in ways the family itself cannot fully control. Meanwhile, royal experts increasingly describe the inheritance as a symbolic passing of influence from one royal generation to another. That interpretation has added another layer of intensity to the public conversation because many now believe the decision reflects how the monarchy quietly sees its own future. Not simply through titles or ceremonial appearances, but through emotional continuity, through carefully chosen symbols capable of preserving public fascination during an era when the institution faces growing uncertainty from every direction. Yet even as admiration for Charlotte continued growing online, palace officials reportedly became increasingly alarmed by the scale of attention surrounding the story. Because the deeper the public looked into Margaret's diamonds, the more questions began emerging about inheritance, royal hierarchy, and hidden palace dynamics that the institution had spent years trying to keep buried beneath silence. Yet behind the headlines and fascination, one haunting question remained unanswered. Why did this moment feel less like a celebration and more like the beginning of a royal transformation? For most children, diamonds are simply beautiful objects. But for Princess Charlotte of Wales, these diamonds carried something far heavier: expectation, history, and the invisible burden of the crown itself. Behind the headlines, the fascination, and the endless speculation surrounding Princess Margaret's legendary jewels, another quieter story was unfolding inside palace walls. It was not a story about glamour or wealth. It was a story about pressure. According to insiders close to royal staff, Charlotte has reportedly become increasingly overwhelmed by the emotional importance attached to the inheritance. Not because she fully understands every historical detail, but because she understands enough. Enough to recognize that these diamonds belong to women whose lives were shaped by sacrifice, scrutiny, and duty long before she was born. Sources familiar with palace conversations claim Charlotte asked difficult questions after learning. More about Margaret's complicated legacy, questions about loneliness, questions about public expectations. Questions about why royal women often seemed admired by the world while quietly carrying immense personal burdens behind closed doors. Those conversations reportedly affected both Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, deeply, because they have spent years trying to give their children something previous generations of royals often struggled to maintain a grounded childhood untouched by overwhelming institutional pressure. But the monarchy rarely allows complete escape from its own gravity. And according to royal insiders, Charlotte appears unusually aware of that reality for someone so young. Palace observers frequently describe her as disciplined, emotionally perceptive, and remarkably composed during official appearances. Yet those same qualities now seem to intensify concern within her inner circle, because composure inside the royal family often arrives hand in hand with emotional restraint, the kind learned early, the kind expected silently, the kind that slowly transforms childhood into preparation for duty. That is why Margaret's jewels have taken on such powerful symbolic meaning. Historians increasingly frame the collection not merely as an inheritance, but as a continuation of emotional legacy passed from one royal generation to another. Princess Margaret herself became a figure associated with beauty, heartbreak, rebellion, and sacrifice all at once. And according to several royal commentators, the diamonds now carry traces of that emotional history wherever they go. To inherit them is to inherit memory itself. Royal historians have also pointed toward a deeper pattern hidden throughout royal history. Again and again, royal women inherited far more than crowns, jewels, or ceremonial importance. They inherited emotional responsibility. They became symbols during moments of national uncertainty. They carried expectations larger than themselves while the public projected hope, fascination, and criticism onto their lives simultaneously. From Queen Elizabeth II to Princess Margaret to Diana, Princess of Wales, the pattern remained painfully familiar. And now, some fear Charlotte may already be stepping quietly into that same emotional current. As attention surrounding the diamonds intensified, palace officials reportedly moved carefully to limit Charlotte's exposure to public scrutiny. According to insiders, aides have become increasingly selective about discussions involving the inheritance in Charlotte's presence, while William and Catherine allegedly continue shielding her from the more aggressive aspects of public debate. But even with those protections in place, the symbolism attached to the jewels keeps growing stronger. Reports suggest certain pieces from Margaret's collection may eventually appear during major future royal events connected to Charlotte's public role within the monarchy. And if that happens, the emotional significance surrounding the inheritance could expand even further. Meanwhile, public fascination surrounding Charlotte's future continues accelerating at a pace the palace may no longer fully control. What began as curiosity about diamonds has transformed into something much larger, a conversation about succession, legacy, and the next generation of royal identity itself. Every appearance Charlotte makes now seems to attract deeper analysis. Every gesture becomes symbolic. Every moment feels loaded with implication. And as Charlotte quietly adjusted to the weight of Margaret's legacy, another realization began spreading across royal circles: the monarchy itself may already be preparing for a very different future. What truly unsettled royal insiders was not merely the diamonds themselves, it was what the inheritance appeared to symbolize. Because within palace corridors, some reportedly viewed this moment as the first unmistakable sign of Princess Charlotte of Wales's extraordinary future inside the House of Windsor. By the time discussions surrounding Princess Margaret's diamonds reached their peak, the conversation had already evolved far beyond jewelry. According to royal commentators, the inheritance increasingly looked like a signal. Not an official declaration, not a formal announcement, but something quieter and potentially far more powerful. Within the monarchy, symbols often reveal intentions long before institutions speak openly. And insiders now whisper that the decisions surrounding Charlotte may represent the palace's earliest emotional investment in the next generation of royal leadership. That interpretation has sent waves of fascination through royal circles because the comparisons surrounding Charlotte have become impossible to ignore. Some commentators see traces of Princess Anne in her growing discipline and calm under pressure. Others point towards similarities with Queen Elizabeth II's emotional restraint and instinctive understanding of royal duty. 2. Then there are those who believe Charlotte carries echoes of Princess Margaret's charisma and quiet magnetism, qualities that once captivated the public despite the turbulence surrounding Margaret's life. Together, those comparisons create an image that feels almost mythic within modern royal storytelling, a young princess carrying fragments of several powerful royal women at once. Reports suggest palace insiders have become increasingly aware of Charlotte's unusual emotional resilience. According to sources close to royal staff, she processes public attention with a maturity that often surprises those around her. While most children her age would naturally recoil from constant scrutiny, Charlotte reportedly maintains a composed and observant presence during official appearances. That composure, however, has only deepened speculation about her long-term role within the monarchy. Because inside the House of Windsor, resilience is not merely admired, it is essential for survival. At the center of this growing transformation stands Prince William, whose reported vision for the future monarchy appears increasingly deliberate. Royal observers believe William is attempting to modernize the institution carefully while still preserving the emotional traditions that give the crown its enduring power. Unlike previous generations, he reportedly understands that the monarchy can no longer survive through distance alone. It must appear emotionally connected to the public while still protecting its sense of continuity and mystique. And according to insiders, Charlotte may quietly represent an important part of that balance. Meanwhile, Catherine, Princess of Wales, is said to be playing an equally significant role behind the scenes. Palace sources claim Catherine has become deeply focused on shaping Charlotte's public confidence without allowing royal expectation to consume her identity completely. That balancing act is reportedly delicate and emotionally exhausting because the more public fascination around Charlotte grows, the more difficult it becomes to preserve any sense of ordinary childhood around her. Every appearance is analyzed. Every smile becomes symbolic. Every moment is interpreted as evidence of what kind of royal woman she may eventually become. According to several palace insiders, discussions surrounding Charlotte's future ceremonial importance may already be taking place privately within senior royal circles. Nothing official has emerged publicly, but whispers continue spreading that the monarchy is quietly considering how Charlotte could eventually embody continuity between royal generations in a rapidly changing world. In that context, Margaret's diamonds have taken on extraordinary symbolic force. They are no longer viewed merely as treasured heirlooms. They are increasingly described as emotional bridges connecting Elizabeth, Margaret, Catherine, and Charlotte across different eras of royal history. And as public fascination surrounding Charlotte reached unprecedented levels, one reality became impossible for palace officials to ignore. People were no longer simply watching a child grow up. They believed they were witnessing the early formation of a future royal figure whose influence could shape the monarchy for decades to come. But even as the monarchy quietly embraced Charlotte's rising importance, one final emotional truth remained: the diamonds represented not only inheritance, but remembrance. In the end, Princess Margaret's diamonds were never truly about wealth, glamour, or royal privilege. They were about memory, the preservation of voices, struggles, and royal women whose influence refused to disappear with time. As the noise surrounding the inheritance slowly settled into reflection, a different understanding began emerging across royal circles. The fascination had never really been about jewels alone. It was about what those jewels represented inside one of the world's most emotionally complicated institutions. According to royal historians, Margaret's collection carried decades of hidden meaning beneath its brilliance. Every stone seemed attached to moments of triumph, heartbreak, loneliness, duty, and resilience that defined not only Margaret's life, but the lives of royal women across generations. And now, with those diamonds reportedly tied to Princess Charlotte of Wales, the monarchy appeared to be preserving far more than family treasure. It was preserving emotional history itself. Over time, public perception surrounding Margaret's legacy also began shifting in unexpected ways. For years, she was often remembered through the lens of scandal, rebellion, and emotional turmoil. But according to palace commentators, Charlotte's connection to the diamonds has encouraged many people to revisit Margaret's story with greater empathy and softness. Suddenly, the woman once portrayed as difficult and tragic is increasingly viewed as deeply human, a royal figure trapped between personal longing. and institutional expectation. That emotional reevaluation has transformed the inheritance into something profoundly symbolic because Charlotte is not simply receiving Margaret's jewels. In many ways, she is inheriting the responsibility of carrying forward a misunderstood legacy. Behind palace walls, reports suggest Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, remain intensely protective over Charlotte as public attention surrounding her future continues growing. According to insiders, both parents understand how dangerously overwhelming royal symbolism can become once the public attaches larger meaning to a single figure. They reportedly want Charlotte to understand her family history without allowing it to consume her emotionally. That balancing act may become one of the defining challenges of her childhood, because every gesture surrounding the inheritance now appears loaded with expectation. Royal historians increasingly describe Margaret's diamonds not as luxury possessions, but as emotional artifacts tied to the survival of royal continuity itself. Inheritance within the monarchy has always carried symbolic importance, but this moment feels different because it arrives during a period of deep uncertainty surrounding the institution's future. Questions about modernization, public trust, generational transition, and the long-term role of the monarchy continue growing louder across Britain and beyond. And within that uncertainty, Charlotte's inheritance has become a surprisingly powerful symbol of continuity between the past and whatever future may lie ahead. That may explain why public fascination surrounding Charlotte feels so unusually intense. People are not simply watching a young princess inherit historical jewels. They are projecting hopes, anxieties, and expectations about the monarchy itself onto her future. Some see stability, others see pressure. Some believe she represents the monarchy's ability to evolve while still preserving its emotional connection to history. Others fear she may eventually face the same painful burdens carried by royal women before her. But nearly everyone seems to agree on one thing. This moment matters far more than the palace initially expected. According to palace insiders, the inheritance may shape Charlotte's royal identity for years to come. Not because of titles or ceremony, but because symbols have extraordinary power inside the House of Windsor. They shape public imagination quietly over time until eventually they become inseparable from the people connected to them. And now Charlotte stands at the center of that transformation, whether she fully realizes it yet or not. And somewhere within the silent sparkle of Margaret's diamonds, the monarchy may already see the reflection of its next generation, quietly preparing for a future far larger than Princess Charlotte ever imagined. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.